A lot of people overestimate what they can do in 10 years and underestimate what they can do in 3. This concept of 3, it's just, you can fundamentally change everything in such a short sliver of your life. But what I do have and what I do believe that I'm world class at is having a crystal clear vision for what I want my life to be and creating an actionable and executable game plan to get me to that result and get me to that outcome. You do not start with the what, then the when, then the why. You inverse it. If you guys just invert the equation, you will unlock everything that you want of your life.
3 years ago today, I joined a mastermind called Action Academy. At the time, I was a W-2 employee building a rental portfolio 20 minutes at a time in the cracks in my schedule after my 2-year-old daughter went to sleep. We had gone from dual income, no kids in 2020 to one full-time income and soon to be household of 5. 3 years later, Andrea and I are 22 months into construction on a $10 million ground-up residential assisted living development that will serve dozens of seniors and allow us to each reach every financial goal we've ever dreamed of. But so many elements of our current project and vision can be traced back to work we did and people we met in Action Academy. And today I'm grateful to have one of my most influential mentors and friends, Brian Luebben, as my guest. Brian, it's very hard for me to believe it's been 3 years to the day. Can't think of a better day to have you on. And thank you for being here.
It's 3 years to the day.
Literally.
3 years to the day, man. 3 years flies by. It's funny. A lot of people overestimate what they can do in 10 years and underestimate what they can do in 3. And so it's funny, this concept of 3, it's just, you can fundamentally change everything in such a short sliver of your life. And hopefully by the end of today's episode, people will realize that A, that's possible, and B, they'll actually have a framework and a toolkit to be able to apply it.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that intro, man. That gave me goosebumps.
Of course. I mean, it's important to share the actual results of all the hard work. You know, people join groups looking for an outcome, and it's up to us to surround ourselves with the right people that can help us get there. So one of the very first things that we talked about, you have shared many frameworks with me and the rest of the group over the years, but there's one in particular called the CVC framework. And I have internalized that to my very core. And we talk about a 3-year arc of time and how most people, especially when they are in some sort of pain or want to make a change in their life, they want to jump straight into relentless action, but oftentimes they skip the step of actually figuring out what is the right asset class, what am I actually aiming towards. So I'm wondering if you can explain this framework in your own words, and then maybe we can unpack it a bit.
100%. So CVC stands for clarity, volume, and consistency. So I think that when you think of goal setting or what you want in life and actualization of anything, whether it's physical, spiritual, relational, or financial, all of it comes down to, are you crystal clear about what you want? Are you clear on the amount of volume it takes to get there? And are you clear on how long it actually takes for you to do said volume to produce said result, right? And so what we've taken thousands of people through, and then you as well in Action Academy, we have I think 720 members now across the United States, did over $1 billion in member deals and acquisition. It's, how do we take somebody that's working a great job? Most people that are listening to this show, most people in Action Academy, they're not like, F my boss, I want to flip over a table. You know, I'm not making what I'm worth. It's just, everybody's making great money. They've got a good enough job and they're just comfortable and they just know they're meant for more. So it's like you have a level 100 skill set and a level 10 opportunity. That's it. You know, I don't want to demonize corporate America, and I don't want to convince people that are listening to this to go out and flip your boss the bird and quit their jobs tomorrow, right? But the issue is, the reason that people aren't making momentum and the reason that people aren't making progress is that they have not followed this formula. And once you see this formula, it's like the red pill in the matrix, to where when you take the pill, everything else looks different and you view everything else in your life through a different lens. So let's start with the first C, and then we'll get into the V and then the final C. So the first C is clarity. I am not the world-class leading expert on multifamily investing. I don't have thousands and thousands of units. I don't have billions of dollars of assets under management. I don't have a massive RAL portfolio. But what I do have, and what I do believe that I'm world class at, is having a crystal clear vision for what I want my life to be and creating an actionable and executable game plan to get me to that result and get me to that outcome. And not only has this framework worked for me, but it's worked for you, Aaron. It's worked for hundreds of other people and thousands of other people through our content, of which we do I think 50 million views per month. So how clarity works is most people do it backwards, right? So they start with the how, and then they go to the when, and then the why, if they ever even get to the why, right? So you're like, I heard a podcast about residential assisted living and I'm going to start doing that. Or I heard a podcast about storage, or they listen to me or watch me on Instagram and they're like, I want to buy a business, right? You start with the vehicle. The issue, and this is also applies to somebody that's a multi-millionaire as much as somebody just getting started, is if you just get in a vehicle, no matter what vehicle it is, and just start driving, but you have no GPS set, you're going to end up broken down on the side of the road. And all of your family that's in the car with you, that's been begging you to take a pit stop and been begging you to stop, they're going to wonder what the heck you were doing, and they're going to get out of the car and leave you. All right. So clarity does not work in the way that most people do it. You do not start with the what, then the when, then the why. You inverse it, you flip it. And if somebody takes something from this podcast in the first 5 minutes and 50 seconds here, is if you guys just invert the equation, you will unlock everything that you want of your life. And so I call it directional, sequential, tactical clarity. All right. So when we're starting with clarity, we're going where and why. Okay. So we're starting with the end in mind. So if you're in a job and you're saying, hey, I want to have this life, right? Don't say you want financial freedom. What does financial freedom even mean? You ask 100 people that, you get 100 different answers. And I'll tell you the answer I've gotten from giving 3,000 people this question across our webinar series. Everybody says, well, I want to do what I want, when I want, with who I want. I want to travel. I want to travel with my kids. I want to pick my kids up from school. And these are great answers, but they're half-baked answers because you haven't taken the time to properly think about it. So if you won the lottery tomorrow, what would your Tuesday look like? Your perfect Tuesday, not like all this amorphous, like pie in the sky stuff. What does your perfect Tuesday look like? What does a normal day in the week look like for you? Like, what are you doing with your kids? Where are you living? How is your relationship? How is your health? How do you feel about money? How are your businesses? What type of businesses are you running? It's a lot of feeling questions. So first we define where we're going. And there isn't necessarily a dollar sign to that yet. It's just, this is the result that we want. Then it goes by when. This is the single most powerful clarifying question that nobody asks. And this is the reason that 9 out of 10 of you guys listening are stuck. Because you maybe do have this idea of where you want to be, but you never defined when. So you can't have a strategy if you don't have these two parameters. Think about it like you're bowling at a bowling alley and you're rolling the ball down towards the pins, right? And you have both sides where you have the gutter. And so it's just like you have to have the bumpers that are keeping you from going into the freaking gutter. And so the ball can keep bouncing towards the pins, right? So those two bumpers on each side of the bowling alley are number one, where am I going? And number two, by when, okay? So let me show you how this math works. If I know that I want to replace a $20,000 a month sales career, right? And I want to do it 5 years from now. There's a wildly different amount of strategies that I can pursue to do that versus if I want to do it by the end of the year. A lot of people are doing 5-year strategies with a 1-year timeline, and they're very stressed out, pissed off, and confused, and they don't understand why. All right. So by when is sequential. All right. So you get your vision. By when do you want to knock it out? 1 year, 3 year, 5 years, and you make that determination, which leads you to tactical. Because once you have these two pillars, the third pillar is, well, what is the best vehicle that's going to get me there? And I use the analogy of if I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, and I want to get to Disney in Florida, do I want to ride a bike to Disney? Do I want to drive to Disney? Or do I want to fly to Disney? It depends on when I want to get to Disney. If I want to get to Disney in a week, I can ride a bike. If I want to get there in a day, I can drive. If I want to get there by the end of the morning, I fly. And so a lot of people are riding bikes when they're trying to get to Disney in the afternoon. And it's so laughable to think about. But when you just do clarity, directional, sequential, tactical, all of a sudden everything unlocks, and now you have a reason to say no to things. So Aaron, do you want to share quickly kind of like how you went through that process and how that helped you kind of define and design what your path was?
Yeah, 100%. It starts with the when, right? A lot of people, you hear, oh, $10,000 a month, $20,000 a month. Everyone is pretty clear on like what kind of cash flow number drives them. But you're right. If you want to replace that or create that outside of your W-2 job in 1 year, that's going to be a totally different set of things that you're going to do and a speed at which you're going to go than if you want to do 5 years or 10 years. And I think when we first started investing in rental properties, my wife Andrea and I, we bought them slowly and methodically, like most people do. We scaled our portfolio up to 8 rental properties across 3 states. We were bringing in about $18,000 a month in gross rent, and we were comfortably keeping $5,000. Anybody, including ourselves, we were proud of what we had done and the skills we had built, but immediately we recognized that wasn't going to get us to our end goal of living a prosperous, fruitful life with our children, a household of 5, and especially the when for us became very clear because of our children's age. If anybody's read that, blanking
Family
on
board meeting,
family board meeting, right? He talks
18
about 18
summers.
summers, and that's a finite once in a lifetime window. And so for us, I think we realized if we just continued on our path of trying to save up money and keep our household afloat and try and invest here and there in rental properties, we were going to miss our entire kids' best window of opportunity to spend quality time with them. And that was simply unacceptable. So that was where we planted the flag. And for us, it's pretty clear it's around 2028, 2029 that we want to have our business booted up and be at our financial objectives. And so in order to do that, we worked backwards, and it turns out we're going to have to pay a cost, right? We're going to have to compromise a lot. We're going to have to accept a different level of risk than we would have had we gone slow and steady. And I'm not trying to glorify that at all, but to your point about the framework, if what we want is what we say we want, then we have to do what it takes to get there. And so for us, it was kind of recognizing that the path and the speed and frequency that we were building towards our goals was not even close to landing us when we wanted to be there. So that's one immediate example.
Correct. And then that's going to pivot us very nicely into volume, right? But first, I want to pull out a couple of things that you brought up there. So we brought up the book, Family Board Meeting by Jim Shields, because a lot of people are confused. They're clear on the where and the why, but they're confused on the when, or they don't even know what when is possible for them. And so a lot of people are very comfortable and they need a kick in the tail to get them to start acting. And so the primary concept of this book is you have 18 summers with your kids. 18. So as soon as your child goes from 0 to 18 years old, they're not forced to hang out with you anymore. Your time is up. And so those first 18 summers will determine how often you see your child throughout the remainder of their adult lives. Is it going to be once a year at Christmas, or is it going to be multiple times? So an example of that is, my fiance, Natalia, she hasn't gone 60 days without seeing her family. She's 32. She sees her family, and they're 5 hours away, by the way. She sees her family once a month minimum, because that's what they did. They nailed the first 18 summers. And so I want to clarify something really quickly before we go into the second V, which is volume, right? We just talked about this first C. Now we're going into the V, volume. The thing about volume is it is much better when you guys made that agreement to where you're like, this is what we're going to do, and here's what's required to get there in this time frame, right? That is different than just a blanket grind or die. What most people do is they don't have the destination and they can't tell you why they're doing the volume of work that they're doing. Therefore, they continue doing that volume of work. And now all of a sudden you've got a $10 million portfolio, $20 million, $50 million, $100 million portfolio, or even greater. And you just missed your kids grow up, but you use the excuse and you were screaming into the sky that I'm doing it for my family the entire time that you're directly not spending time with your family while you're building up the business. It was never about your family. It was about your endless pursuit for more. Because to use the analogy from the very beginning, you were driving your car down this infinite highway with no GPS set, right? So now to get to V, volume. People are either unclear of what's required for them to get where they want to go, or they're unclear on the amount of volume that's required for them to get where they want to go. An example of this that we see all the time in Action Academy is, I want to buy a business this year. And 6 months goes by and we say, hello, fine sir. Hello, fine ma'am. Where are you at in your acquisition journey? And they say, I've looked at 5 businesses and I'm just so busy. I just don't have time, and I'm going to figure it out eventually. And I'm like, try 500. Try 500. So I learned something. I paid Alex Ramosi a lot of money, but he also shares this one framework for free for everybody. So I'll share it here. And it's this concept of more, better, and new. And so if you're stuck, there's only 3 options that you can take. You can do more of what you're currently doing. You can do that activity better than you're currently doing it, or you could do something new. Most people, 99%, default to new. 99% of the time, 99.99% of the time, the answer is more. So you're just not doing enough output. You're not calling enough brokers. You're not analyzing enough deals. You're not talking to enough capital investors. You're not interviewing enough contractors. You're not interviewing enough lawyers for your operating agreement. You're not doing enough of the volume required, right?
I want to add one thing, Brian, if you don't mind. So
Please.
you said 99% of the time the answer is more, but that's if you nailed the C for clarity, right? Like if you just
Correct.
skip that step, then you don't know if you're doing more of the right thing. So that's why it's sequential to before you ramp up the volume.
Aaron, I'm not busy. Rich people aren't busy. I'll say this. Rich people are busy. Wealthy people aren't, because they understand the value of their time. And so it's just like, man, because rich is income, wealth is assets, wealth is equity, wealth is like, man, I got this in the bank, right? And so it's just like busy as a badge of honor is something that you must kill. And it's what gets you by in corporate America. And this is another massive lesson for people listening to this podcast is busy as a badge of honor is the first victim of your firing squad for you to be truly successful. Because if you do not kill your busyness badge of honor, then you will become an entrepreneur and you will leave a 40-hour-a-week job with PTO and salary and health benefits. And now you will work 100 hours a week in your own business mindlessly because busyness is a badge of honor. And how dare somebody work harder than you, right? So getting clear on the amount of volume required and not going past that is really important. So a last kind of guardrail that I'll put, again, another bumper to make sure that your ball doesn't go into the gutter, right? And actually hits the pins, is what I call Parkinson's law. So Parkinson's law states that the amount of work will expand to the time allotted for its completion. So when we get to this point where we are clear on the amount of volume, we are clear on how many dials we're doing, how many reps are required, how many inputs are required for us to hit what we're trying to do. Once we're clear on that, now we create a smaller time window whereby we must do that. And so a lot of people use the excuse of, I have kids, I can't do this. And I would argue that you are an efficiency machine 10 times more efficient than me when I started my business as a single guy with no obligations. Because you have the luxury of not having enough time.
I think constraints can be a superpower, honestly.
It's not a disadvantage. It is a superpower. You have the constraints necessary for success. Larry Ellison, the founder of Oracle, he owns an entire island in Hawaii. They said, Larry, how did you grow up in this rough side of Chicago and you made it to where you are today? And he goes, I had all the disadvantages necessary for my success. And it's just like, what a wonderful reframe, right? Oh, I work this job. I work really hard. Good. I have these young kids. Good. I have a spouse that actually requires me to kiss them and give them affection and attention. Good. Great. So that means that you don't have the luxury of having a wide open calendar. Let's get serious about how we're actually going to pull this off and let's get efficient, right? That's how you build a system. That's how you build a process. Damn it, are you about to be an awesome business owner? Okay. So that's V, volume. An example of this practically is, again, like, so for you to reasonably get under contract on a small business in Action Academy, I want you to look at 100 deals minimum, fully underwrite, at least 20% of them, 20 of them, submit an offer on at least 5 or 10 of them, and you can reasonably expect to get under contract on one. So now to finish the point of V, how do you know, Brian and Aaron, what the proper amount of volume is? And I would answer that most of you, again, I would say dang near close to 100% of you guys are not doing something like Elon Musk where you're sending a rocket into space that hasn't been done before. You're not trying to populate Mars. You have done something that somebody else somewhere has already accomplished. If you're trying to buy real estate, great. Other people have done it before you. If you're trying to be a business owner, great. Other people have done it before you. We have figured out business. We have figured out real estate. If you go into any public library, there's an entire section dedicated to it. So we already know what to do in the amount of volume because people have done it. So the secret is you just go to the person that's done that and you say, hi, what's the amount of volume required? And that's a very easy question for somebody to answer because we're like, oh, just do this. Got it. I know for me to do $10 million, I know off the back of my head, like immediately, I know that I need 400 intro calls for Action Academy per month at a 72% show rate, a 21% close rate. Will do $10 million a year. So my magic number is the volume. Okay, now what are the inputs required for us to get 400 applicants for Action Academy, right? How does that break down? And then that's where I live, right? Because I'm clear on that number. The last C, we just want clarity, we just want volume. Let's go consistency, okay? So sometimes you are crystal clear on what you want and what's required. You are doing the proper amount of volume, comma, and you need to shut up and just realize you've been doing it a week, a year is required. You have to pay the cost that's associated with what your end result is. And I'm sorry to tell you guys this, but it's just like, if you want to have a six-pack abs, great kids, an amazing marriage, and make millions and millions of dollars per year, there's a cost associated with that to pull that off. All right. I paid it. Here we are. And so it's just like, you have to be aware of how long the game actually takes. And so when you really view business and when you really view entrepreneurship at the best that it can be viewed, which is not going and chasing every shiny object, not having a million businesses, having one vertical, one lane. Like Aaron, I would cry tears of joy if, like, how old are you right now?
36.
36. I'd cry tears of joy if the one thing you did from 36 to 50 was just residential assisted living. If you just do that for over a decade, you will accomplish all your wildest hopes and dreams, right? And so in reality, in entrepreneurship, you only have a few true shots on goal to create something monumental. I've been doing Action Academy for 3.5 years. I started Action Academy and I was like, what can I build in a decade? Not in a year, not in a month. How can I build this into a decade and do nothing else for a decade? And so from 30 till 40 years old, the one thing I was doing is Action Academy. From 40 to 50, I don't know what that decade looks like yet. But when you start thinking long-term and you have a long-term plan and a long-term vision, you start attracting who? Long-term people that also are aligned with what you're doing, right? And so an example of this that I like to use is the gym. So I just had a big health and fitness journey. You know, I lost 30 pounds recently in a short time frame, and in 20 weeks, lost 30 pounds. And through that process, it's just like, you can't lose 30 pounds in a week. Another great example is pregnancy. You can't optimize pregnancy to be pregnant for 4 months and then have a baby. Like, that's not a super baby, you know? Pregnancy is 9 months. You don't want pregnancy to be shorter than 9 months. You want it to be 9 months to full term, right? So why are we trying to rush business? Why are we trying to rush these things? It's just, we have a misunderstanding and a misexpectation of the amount of volume to do it and how long it takes. So again, how do you get that answer? You go to somebody that's done it before, and then they just sit you down and they tell you. Like for me, I can confidently say we did almost $500 million of acquisition at Action Academy last year. We got really good numbers now. If you want that $10,000 a month passive income number for multifamily, for storage, for mobile home, about 3 years. About 3 years, you'll have a pretty good shot at getting there. Not 3 months, about 3 years. If you want to get it through maybe residential assisted living and boutique hotels, about 2 years, about 24 months. You could pull it off in about 24 months. If you want to do it through small business, about 12 months, you can pull it off. But it's just like, you get that through doing the thing, right? And so I'll get off my soapbox, but that's 24 minutes of the CVC formula: clarity, volume, and consistency. And you guys can apply that to anything. If you feel stuck, if you feel lost, if you feel confused, you just need to run it through those 3 filters. Am I clear about what I want? Am I clear about the amount of volume required? And am I clear about how long it takes for me to get there, right? If you're clear on all 3 of those things, then you can know that you aren't broken because you're not seeing results. It's just how the process works.
100%. That framework completely transformed our lives and is still continuing to settle in. And I've shared it with dozens and maybe hundreds of people at this point. So it's great to hear it straight from the source. The other thing I'd say too about timelines is that some people maybe have a misconception that once you start putting inputs in, so whether that's analyzing deals, contacting brokers, like from the time you take an action to the time you see the result, people sometimes don't contextualize that properly too. You might make 100 phone calls and get nothing out of it, but that doesn't mean that it was all for nothing, right? Each one, if you're iterating and understanding, you know, what worked, what didn't, and if you're treating it like math and understanding that there's leading indicators and lagging indicators, that's another piece. And that's where, like, obviously a lot of what you just said is largely mindset, And of course, within Action Academy, we have all sorts of trackers, and everyone
Mm-hmm.
has different ways of measuring things. But I think it's important also, like on this, the consistency C, to not just give up because you've been working on it for 3 months and you haven't seen your outcomes yet, because that work also compounds. And so even when you start to see results, if you've been working really hard for 3 months, the beginning of the results might not be as outsized as you'd like them to be. But if you expand upon that and let it compound over time, it can turn into what you will, ultimately want in the long run. And so for us, like we've been at this project almost 2 years, and over a year of that was just being under contract. And Andrea was driving around for 3 months looking at land all over Houston.
Mm-hmm.
Like, of course, now people look at our project and they're like, oh, you have Resolve, you have a very specific market, you know that market inside and out. But there was 6-7 months leading up to that where we were trying to find our spot. And we recognized, like, spinning our wheels over and over and over again, not finding it. We could easily have quit after 2 or 3 months, but that's what it took to at least get the traction to get started to where we are now.
There's two specific pillars, and as we're on this podcast live, I'll create a framework for this later. It took me like a year to create CVC. There's two specific pillars that prevent people from being entrepreneurs, Aaron. And if they were able to identify these two pillars, or call them two roadblocks, and push through them, they would have everything they've ever wanted on the other side of it. And I think this applies to more than just business. But the first one is, I took this from Tony Robbins, which is the quality of your life is directly determined by the levels of uncertainty that you can comfortably manage. So to your point, it's like when you are working a job, you're told what to do, how to do it, and by when. And that's your entire life since you were born, by the way. Born, elementary, middle, high, college, university, corporate, right? You're told what to do by when, and if you do this, you get this result. The reason entrepreneurship is so scary for people is because I'm doing an endless amount of work into the void, and I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that this will produce the result that I'm looking for, which is economic gain, financial freedom, time freedom, hanging out with my family, all this stuff. And so that's why it baffles me that so many people try to do this by themselves. And that's why we don't sell courses, because I've taken so many courses and none of them help me, because I'm just like, it doesn't help me with just having somebody there to be like, hey, you're doing the right stuff. I've already accomplished what you're looking to. Keep going. Just like keep going. And just having somebody tell you keep going is such an infinite ROI that's really hard to quantify, and it's really hard to sell in a podcast like this. But it's just like every single period of my life that I've been stuck, including today. Like I just hired the creator of Vivid Vision, Cameron Harold. He's my personal CEO coach now. So him and I speak one-on-one now a couple of times a month, and for hours and hours and hours. And he helps me with all of these things. He said, hey, you need to do this to get here. I've been here for 40 years. I have context. And so the real cheat code to life is figuring out who has been where you want to be, which you guys did a wonderful job on. And we won't hit it here because I'm sure you've talked about it on your podcast, where not only did you have Alex Schlow with the Row Room, but you also had the couple that you partnered with that have done the exact kind of build out that you're doing. So you don't need to reinvent the wheel, right? So the first pillar, the first roadblock of entrepreneurship is, can I actually live with uncertainty comfortably? And the second one that I'm recently working on is from a book called The Upside of Stress by Kelly McMonigal. And it's your level of success that you will directly experience in your life is in direct proportion to how comfortably you can manage stress. So stress isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's bad if you internalize it. So stress can exist. You want stress on your external. You want stress around you, because what does that mean? It means that you're doing something that's worth impact, that's purposeful, that is economic. Like business, by the way, is solving problems. And so if you're not having any problems, you're not doing anything. You're just smoking weed and living in Jamaica,
Complacent.
on the beach. Yeah,
you're complacent.
You're doing nothing. So if you know that the way for you to get to where you want to go is by solving problems, then you need to learn how to manage stress and manage uncertainty. So if you just build those two muscles, if you build your uncertainty muscle and you build your stress muscles, your stress management muscle and your uncertainty management muscle, everything else is downstream from that. Everything else in entrepreneurship is downstream. And so it's just like, if you can just knock out those two meta skills, you'll be okay. And it's a process I'm going through right now, because what I've realized, and a thing that I've learned recently, very recently, is that every single one of these new problems, it feels like the end of the world. But then what I like to do is I like to zoom out and be like, man, there are people that are like my revenue of my company. If that was a day's worth of revenue for these other companies, that would mean they're going out of business. And so it helps you conceptualize the hilarity of your stress. You're like, huh, got it. I actually don't need to stress about this at all. Things are going to be okay.
We could always use a little perspective on that front. But it's interesting you share that. So one thing that I've been thinking about a lot recently that I'd be curious your thoughts on is sometimes we lump risk appetite and risk tolerance together, but they're actually different things.
Correct.
And your tolerance for taking risk is different than your ability to actually deal with it. And you talk about the managing uncertainty and like managing stress, but it's really hard to put yourself in the frame of mind to understand what it would even feel like. I can't academically understand how much pressure we felt last year when we were raising all that money and securing a bank loan and personally guaranteeing like you can't picture yourself in those moments until you're there.
But once
even though
now that you've done it, you could do it again, same experience, and feel zero stress.
Maybe not zero, but much less than the first time. But I guess my question to you then is, how can someone prepare, or like, because I know you do a lot of stuff around your state of mind and the story, and like there's a lot of mindset work to kind of prepare for this, but knowing that you can't actually like simulate the experience of being in the thick of it, what is the best way someone can prepare if they're considering like a project of that magnitude?
Cool. So, because fear, uncertainty, and doubt is the reason that you're not doing anything. Like, it's not your skin color. It's not where you were born. It's not your parents and how much they loved you or they didn't. It's not how much money you have in your pocket. It's your fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right? So I'd compare it to skydiving. Like when I went skydiving for the first time, there is no way that I can conceptualize what it would feel like. There is no concept, like it's such a out of human experience that your brain, your primal brain is like, I'm nervous about jumping out of a plane, but I don't know what the sensation is going to be for me to be nervous about. So you don't even know how to prepare mentally until you do it. So you jump out of the airplane and you're like, wow, okay, now I know what it feels like to skydive. Okay. So what I would say is, how do you manage that, right? How do you prepare for that? You can't read a book about skydiving. Which is what I say that, tongue in cheek, because that's what most of us do, right? You're like, well, I'm going to go start a business. I'm going to read Traction, or I'm going to read The Hard Things by Ben Horowitz. And I'm going to
buy an online course.
Yeah, I'm going to go buy an online course. That's not the answer, because I'm guilty. I read all the business books before I ran a business, right? I read Traction before I had a business. Makes no sense. But I was trying to like simulate skydiving before I skydived. I don't know what the proper term is. But how I would say is the best way to prepare is just do it. Now, I'm not recommending you just jump out of a plane with no parachute, right? Well, what is your parachute and how do you mitigate risk? It's called asymmetric risk. So you don't want to remove risk, because that's like this bubblegum pop styrofoam boy in the plastic bubble kind of life. Like you don't want to remove risk. You want to mitigate risk. You want asymmetric risk, which means that you have a basement floor, you have a downside capped of where the risk is going to end, and the upside is unlimited, right? So in the terms of skydiving, right? When I'm skydiving, it's like, okay, well, how can I mitigate the risk? I can jump with somebody that's jumped 1,000 times before. They've done 4 jumps today. They jump every single day for 2 decades, right? We can also have other people in the sky with us that are all to the left and to the right of us. One of them's with the GoPro in case our backup shoots don't come. He's going to be able to be there to catch us and make sure that we're okay. We also have 3 or 4 other people all jumping at the same time, which is a law, by the way. So you can't go skydiving by yourself. You need to have X amount of buddies that are also in the air with you. So you have your chute, your backup chute, and you have all your buddies in the sky with you. What a wonderful analogy for entrepreneurship. Yeah. Why would you jump out of an airplane by yourself? Which is why they don't. So the answer is community. The answer is people. And I'm not saying that because I run a community. I'm saying it's community. That's why I built our community. Because when you're out and you've got your person that's, strapped up next to you, that's the mentor, that's the coach, that's the person that's done it, right? You're literally strapped to them. They're telling you what to do. Hey, sit tight. I've got you. And then you've got all of your peers around you for support that are all jumping too, and they're nervous too. Or maybe a couple of them have done some solo jumps already, and now they're watching you as you're going through it.
Yeah.
That's the answer is you want to be around other people that are doing it. You need a support system.
Yeah, absolutely. And then translated to our project, very quickly, you already alluded to this, but we had partners who had already built the exact building we're building. So that would be your skydiving instructor, I suppose.
Yep.
We have partners who are on our general partner team who have unique capabilities that we didn't. We
Yep.
have construction managers who managed over $4 billion in commercial construction projects. They're our owners reps between us and our GC. So they're helping us root out any of these potential rookie mistakes we could have made by surrounding ourselves with the right people. So that would be our example.
Yeah. And you just have to jump, right? And so what a lot of people are doing is, you've got some success and your ego's built up in corporate America because you've got some track record of success, right? And then in your mind, you're hell bent that you have to jump out of the airplane yourself. You don't need anybody's help. I'm just going to go jump out of this airplane by myself. But you never do it because the risk to reward ratio is so out of whack, right? But versus you, it's like not only did you have that, but you had so many other people in Action Academy too, in Row Room, that could come and freaking look at the deal with you. Like, how many sets of eyeballs did you have on these deals as you were going through them? Like, you have so much support. And so it's like, I know what it feels like to not have support, and it's scary. And every time that I get to a season of my life, which I just recently was one, this scale thing to pushing to $20 million plus in a business is super, super hard. And so I found myself without my own communities and my own coaches, which is why I went and hired another coach. Very expensive. But I mean, it's just like he made me pay him $50,000 right now for one guy to just do a call with me a month. So I don't know what that breaks down to per call, but it's just like, man, he made me like $500,000 in one call.
The whole frame of this podcast is around recognizing like how to create true ownership and recognize value, and that it's not always pegged to dollars out, dollars in, right? There's so many different ways to create value. And again, the core thesis of the show is that most people don't recognize that they're creating way more value than they're capturing. And so that's the same idea. If you can pay $1,000 for a phone call and get 5 seconds of one nugget that saves you $200,000 over the next 10 years, you wouldn't be questioning the value of that phone call. But if you don't understand or recognize where that value could trickle through over time and how that can have compounding value, then you're going to be like, man, why did I spend $1,000 on a phone call? Same phone call, but totally different lens. And I think, unfortunately, it takes a little bit of training and understanding and questioning yourself to actually like flip the frame on that stuff.
Yeah. And so the answer to your question is, how do you get comfortable skydiving is you jump out of a plane a lot. And then it just stops registering, So it's just like that's the answer. And so life is just, how do I make sure that I can jump out of this plane a predictable amount of times with a predictable result through repetition, through help, and through guidance, right? And so just over and over and over again, because at the end of the day, how this game works is it doesn't really matter. Like the point of goals, right? And the point of all this financial stuff that we're talking about, the point of the goal isn't to hit the goal. The point of the goal is to become the person that's capable of hitting the goal. Because somebody can take your real estate away from you. Somebody could take your money away from you. Somebody could take your business away from you. Like, it happens all the time. But there's rarely a business book that you read of a famous entrepreneur or a successful entrepreneur that says, hi, I started and everything just went up and to the right for 6 decades.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a very fun book to read, right? That's not a very good hero's journey. You don't learn anything from that. And so the point is to become the type of person capable of doing it. So it's just like, I am now the type of person that's capable of building a company from 0 to 10 million bucks a year. Like, that is an extremely hard skill set that I've spent $957,000 in personal development myself to learn how to do in a short time frame. And now for the rest of my life, I have that skill set. But what I want people to understand is it's not the idea that you need to spend $1 million on personal development. It's the idea of time and the compounding nature of it. Because I'm 31 years old right now. And it's like I've spent the last 5 years of my life on this journey, just forcing it and pouring every dollar that I had into being better, being better, being better. Because every year that you don't know how to make $1 million costs you $1 million. Every year that you don't know how to make $10 million costs you $10 million. Every year that you don't know how to make 50 or make 100 costs you 50 or 100, right? And so again, none of this is monetary. It's just an example. But it's just like the faster that you can cram that skill set into your life, then you can compound that results. Like you were talking about lag versus lead measures. You can compound those results for the entirety of your life. So me having that skill set at 31 is very different than me having that skill set at 51. And that's why it's just like this mad dash to get all this economic return. And for me, I'll get off my soapbox here, but it's just like, I sincerely think, and most people that know me are like, man, you'll for sure be worth $100 million. And for me, that's not the important thing. What I want is, how do I do that without caring about that end result at all, and doing it in a way that's really fun, really fulfilling, and having a blast to drive the vehicle, to where the output, like the economics are the exhaust, right, of the vehicle, not the destination of the vehicle, if that makes sense.
It does. Andrea and I were talking about this last night as we continue to evolve our vision, and we look and the numbers keep getting bigger. And we're very conscious of, like, we don't want the money tail to wag the dog of what we do. And at some points you start to see these bigger numbers and you start to question yourself, are my motivations truly grounded in the service and the mission? And it feels weird to have to ask yourself these questions, because I genuinely believe in the service first mentality, and that if we provide the best outcomes for the residents at our homes and serve the community as best we possibly can, then our financial goals will fall into place. I don't have to keep those front and center in order to drive.
Can I challenge that real quick? Can I fix it for you? I can fix everything for you right now. I can make you, like, through this following statement, I will make you so addicted to making money in the best way possible that you will make 10 times what you think that you will, and you will put your head on the pillow at night and you'll sleep really well. And that is, if you're a good person and you're generous, then you need to collect as much money as humanly possible to help as many people as humanly possible. So you making $1 million, but this is if you're doing it, right? So last year I started it, but this year it's like I have what's called my blessings bucket. And it's not something I talk about, but 10% of my income goes into this bucket, right? And so now, before, I've given it to the church, I've given it to charity, 10% tithing, right?
Yeah.
And so I've always done a really good job of that. But now it's just like, man, I love it. I'm religious. Here you go, God. Take it. None of the praise goes to me. But I really wanted to see some tangible. I wanted to see people take it.
Benefit. Yeah.
And that's what really lights my candle. So now I've got what's called my blessings bucket, to where it's just like 10% of my income goes into this discretionary bucket that's separate from all my other bank accounts. And now my one mission in life throughout my calendar year is, how do I take every dollar in this blessings bucket and go pop it and pour it into all these people, with the one singular rule is, at the end of the year, it has to be zero.
Yeah.
What a game, dude. Play that game and you'll be like, give me $1 million. Give me 10. Dude, it's like Steve Irwin is one of my biggest mentors in life, because he was like, give me all the money, because I'm just going to pour back into conservation. Dude, when you pour $1 into service, you want to talk about ROI? You want to talk about blessings? Like, when you pour into contribution of others and you're like, dude, I want to be the biggest provider, because I can pay my people 20 to 30% with the rest of the market pays. I can have the best talent of caregivers. I can have the best facilities. They can have Egyptian cotton sheets. Like, they're going to have the best programming and the best care and the best medical support. Like, dude, give me all the money. But the issue is, people feel guilty because they don't have any flow of the money. They don't got anything to do with it. And they're like, what are you going to do? Put it in a high yield savings account? Like,
but this is where you say you have to become a different version of yourself to really understand that. And that frame does absolutely help. And I think it's one of the reasons, even we've had a very, very difficult period of financial stress in our household, because we brought 3 kids into the world in 25 months.
Correct.
Right? Again, we went from dual income, no kids.
Priority, volume, consistency.
Yeah, we CVC'd our childbearing too. But that obviously fundamentally changed everything. And even though we are pursuing this big project, and that project is fully capitalized and has a wonderful, well-insulated business plan with lots of different levers we can pull to get to our goals, it's still been a difficult personal financial time for us. So you mentioned that you've done a great job, throughout your life tithing to your church, which is incredible, because a lot of people wait to give. And so we founded our Amin Family Foundation last year, largely on the vision of my wife, Andrea, but it's the same idea. It's similar to your blessings bucket. We were able to raise donations, and then we've been able to give spot support to individual seniors who have a specific struggle. Like, we have flexibility to make an impact in ways that other people can't. And then we also are partnering with different organizations who we know make a huge impact in this industry. And so we've been able to, you said, hey, the biggest gift would be if I spend age 36 to 50 on residential assisted living. Well, we've also found different ways to try and already start giving back. And you're right. It's not just because we feel guilty that, hey, we could be making a lot of money in a long time. It's because that's actually in our hearts what we want to do. But there is a dissonance that I think people feel, and you already challenged it, perfectly, which is there is a guilt around adding more zeros to your income or your profit or whatever it might be, because people don't really fully know how to internalize what that feels like.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, man. It's just like, oh, why do I need to? Here's the problem. Right? So it's just like everybody, like, so for people that aren't seeing, I've got a water bottle here. And so what a lot of people do is they're like, oh, well, my cup is full, man. I don't need any more. My cup's full. We spend $100,000 a year. I don't need $1 million. What would I do with $1 million, right? So your cup is full, right? And so there's no more room for any more abundance to come into your cup. But the game is you cut the bottom off the cup. And when you cut the bottom off the cup, there's an infinite amount of abundance that can pour into you and pour to you because it pours through you. So, man, again, I don't want to make this as much of a religious podcast, but I mean, it goes no matter what religion that you're in. It matters. It goes if you're not religious and you just are like, dude, well, the birds chirp, the grass grows, the sun shines. There's some type of flow to the universe. And I think everybody, religious or not, can appreciate the fact that generous, giving people typically tend to have a better life experience, right? And so for me, I'm like, man, God, if you give me $1 and I can multiply that and turn it into $10 for everybody else, like I just keep getting dollars. I keep getting ideas. I keep getting motivations. I keep getting concepts. I keep getting lessons. I just give them everywhere else. And so I'm a magnifier. That's what I am. I'm a multiplier. And so when I get all of this stuff, it goes through me to others. And man, my life changed. I'm telling you, like, I'm not that smart. I'm not this crazy savant. It's like, dude, 5 years ago, I was selling uniforms out of a truck in rural Georgia in 100-degree weather every single day. And I just changed my opinion from like, okay, cool. Well, how do I make more money to how do I add more value? How do I serve? How do I help the world, improve the world at scale? And I mean, dude, my income more than 10x and it's still going. Yeah. So it's just like, I've been where you are right now today. We've all been there. We've all been in those seasons. And right now is just, you're planting the seeds. It's not time to reap what you're sowing. You're not reaping yet. You're planting the seeds for harvest, right? It's not harvest time yet. You're planting.
Yeah.
I just am coming out of a 5-year period of planning. And if you zoom that out, like Tony Robbins, again, big mentor of mine, he's 65 years old. He just turned 65. And now he's a multi-billionaire. 90% of his wealth came from the last decade because he spent 40 years, selling.
Warren Buffett's the same. Yeah. It's like, I forget what percentage of his wealth all came after age 65.
Dude, crazy. So it's just like, if you just keep sowing the seeds and you just keep doing what you know you need to do and you just don't stop, you'll start reaping.
Yeah.
And it's just like, but you have to be prepared, man. The issue is everyone's got all this wheat sitting ready to be reaped, and they've got this like tiny little bucket because they're like, well, I only need this much wheat. Brother, get the barn, open the door, get all the wheat, and you can distribute it to the people.
It is a powerful frame. And, the abundance mindset is something that I believe, I don't think I ever could internalize or figure out a way to describe it, but it is something that we're surrounded by in Action Academy. It is a result, a byproduct of being part of these groups, being around other people who embody the same thing. And it is infectious. It is contagious. And you're right. I think at some point you just have to give yourself permission to allow things to flow through you, which is a very rewarding thing. I've been very open about my addiction journey, and in recovery, you learn that altruism is, one of the best medicines in the world. Not only for curing addiction, but also just in general. It leads to more fulfillment in your life. And altruism, if anybody doesn't know what that word means, is just giving freely with no expectation of anything in return.
Yep.
And even though Brian runs, a very successful business at this point, he also did hundreds of phone calls for free, right? Just to pour into people and understand what their problems are. And you still do a lot of things for free. And so one doesn't have to come at the expense of the other.
No.
There is one more topic though, Brian, I want to hit with you before we run out of time. And
Sure.
you already touched on it earlier, which you invest in and are partners in hospitality assets, many of which are like luxury or boutique. And one of the values you instill in Action Academy is this idea, I think it was based on the book, right? Unreasonable hospitality. Boom, you even had it right there queued up. But there's a few different concepts and phrases I've heard you use over the years. There's like mint on the pillow, energy, and like different little tiny details that have a completely outsized impact on people's experience. And that same philosophy can be applied in senior living, where you alluded to it earlier. Hey, if you have more money and can drive more revenue, you can hire the best staff. You can find the best manager in the market. You can provide better amenities, all these different things. I'm just curious if you have any musings on the tie between those philosophies and what we're doing for a living.
Sure. So, I mean, in particular with hospitality, I mean, it applies to any business. It applies to if you're running a plumbing company. It applies to if you're running a graphic design t-shirt company, if you're running a mastermind, if you're running, especially if you're running a residential assisted living or a senior care portfolio. So, what's the difference between service and hospitality, right? So, you've read the book, correct, Aaron?
Parts of it.
Okay. So, what's the difference between service and hospitality? So, service is black and white. Hospitality is color. Service is I'm signing on a dotted line for you to provide X, Y, and Z for me. And this is the contractual obligation. Like I give you money, you provide service. Hospitality is how do you make the person feel as they're receiving the service, right? So the delta is in the hospitality. So service is black and white, hospitality is color. You don't want to watch black and white movies anymore. You want to watch movies with big, vibrant, beautiful colors. And so hospitality is the competitive advantage because it is doing the unscalable items and unscalable actions at scale. So how do you build a culture around that, right? So it's just like if you build a culture of hospitality, unreasonable hospitality, which is you go above and beyond for each one of your customers, for each one of your residents, for each one of your employees, and for each one of your members for Action Academy, then you get outsized returns. And so again, it's like these micro deposits. It's just, you said mint on the pillow energy. It's like, right now, we have an entire department of Action Academy that's only job is to look at the group of people buying businesses contractually. They're like, I want to join Action Academy to buy businesses, buy real estate, right? Great. But we're like, okay, you just had a baby, or like you just had a death in the family, or you just had this big celebration. Like, let's send you flowers. Let's send you a onesie. Like, let's send you stuff. And so we're spending like $20,000 a month on that. Like, there's no economic ROI to that. But it creates a surprise and delight. It's the small things that doesn't scale. And so what you want to do is from the very beginning, which I'll share why it's important, and then I'll share how you reinforce it, right? Which is an actual larger lesson of how do you instill and maintain company values, right? Which is the most important thing. I'm literally leaving this call to go to our Action Academy team and give them new values. The process is number one, when everything is the same from a service perspective and anybody can go anywhere for the same price or less, people are going to remember how you made them feel, and that's what keeps them coming back. So again, even if you're doing crawl space maintenance underneath somebody's house, it's like, did you show up polite? Did you show up on time? Did you use their name? Did you compliment their dog? Did you compliment their house? Like 3 items in their house. Did you put on the covers on your booties before you went in? Like these are things that you set as the core standard and the core expectation, and you hire people with those characteristics and personality traits, and you ask them for examples in their life and give them the life story, and then they will tell you without being prompted of ways that they've gone above and beyond for people, and they just share it through their story. And you can't lie as well when you're telling in stories, right? And so you hold people accountable to that standard by you set the standard and you relentlessly praise people for doing it. It's an active process, standards and values. You praise people that are doing the thing and you fire the people that aren't. I just went through this process. Yeah. So it's just like, well, I'll go through the process for the rest of my life. It's like you praise and you remove. I guess you can call it praise and prune. You praise and prune, you praise and prune, you praise and prune. And then when you are parting ways with somebody, it's a respectful thing. It's a polite thing. It's not an emotional thing. It's, I like you, but the standards don't.
Yeah, absolutely. There are little things too that people will never forget. Like I remember when we had our twins and they were going through a crazy like patch of bad sleep, and I posted something about it in Action Academy. And Brian literally personally texted me and sent us $50 and said, hey, you guys need some reprieve, like order yourself some nice dinner. You probably don't remember doing that, not because you don't care, but it's just because like, hey, like that costs you very little
And
in
it
the long
reminded
run.
it, and you remembered it.
And it's something I'll never forget. And one last thing, I know we got to go here, but I did not plan this, but I want to share one other very impactful thing, a conversation you and I had in March of 2024. It's related to the CVC framework. It's related to timing. It's related to taking risks. And we had just had our twins. I was coming off of the paternity leave, and Brian posted something that, hey, anybody who's considering leaving, like I want you to have a direct line into me and let's chat through it and make sure everything that you're mentally prepared and that you've got a plan and all that. And so I remember hitting him up in a little bit of a moment of desperation and saying, hey, like I'm about to have to go back to work and I don't know if I can do it. Right. Like I got these 3 kids and this whole new life and I don't think I can do it, especially seeing all these other people taking all this action and this. And I was speaking like this a little frantically and you're like, hey, tell me about your job. Right. And I shared, I was working in management consulting. You're like, do you hate it? I said, no, I don't hate it. In fact, it's given me a lot of great skills and a lot of income that can propel me. He's like, okay. Is it particularly grueling to the point where it's costing you in other areas of your life? In some regards, it's taking a bunch of my time. Okay, but is it killing you? No, it's not killing me. And then you say, okay, what's your plan? And I said, well, we could sell off some of our rentals. And then you're like, do what with it? Right. And so we went back and forth a little bit. The reason I'm sharing this is because based on Brian, your brand, and based on a lot of the stuff we've been talking about, people might think that you would unconditionally give people advice to just leave their job and go do it. Yeah. And in fact, what was very surprising and timely in that moment was that you said, hey, you're not in extraordinary pain. In fact, you get value you're continuing to extract from your job. You have a new family, and you're probably 6 to 12 months away from figuring out exactly what you need to do for the next decade. Again, you probably don't remember this conversation, and I wouldn't expect you to, but it's one of those things where like I almost took an irreversible or at least a very consequential step out into uncertainty before I was prepared. And that U-turn, literally within the next 6 to 12 months, is when I discovered residential assisted living. So I do think that's not an argument for not taking action, but it is an argument for making sure that you have these ingredients organized and that you're not jumping in 3 months before you're about to get that clarity that you need to move forward. So I wanted to publicly thank you for that phone call and just remind people too that this is not unconditional advice to just YOLO and throw caution to the wind. There's a lot of calculation. There's a lot of mental work. There's a lot of things that go into being able to do this. But I'm very grateful for the role that you've played in our journey and looking forward to continuing to grow together.
Appreciate it, man. And yeah, and closing advice is another big Tony Robbinsism is every single person lives a different life, but it's your interpretation of life, right? So it's like, if I tell you to look around the room and see and name everything that's green, right? You're going to name everything that's green. But then I'm like, okay, well, what was red? You're not going to know because all you were looking for was green. So it's just like when you start observing your situations and observing your life objectively, which I can confidently say that I have because I've gone through a lot of pain recently and a lot of growth. And it's been like sleepless nights and all this. I'm in a season of that right now. And it's just, how do you take the lessons from the burdens, right? Or what's the lesson that you're supposed to learn from this? And when you start looking at things like that objectively, then you're like, got it. Okay. Like I need to zoom out. I need to sit tight and I need to come up with something here. And then when you start looking for reasons why you're like, okay, let's remove what I want and what's best actually. And when you do what's best, instead of just what you're wanting and what you're wanting to find information to convey, then all of a sudden everything unlocks for you. So man, yeah, it's been a blast watching you grow. I still remember Andrea pregnant in Costa Rica when we were doing our first event. We had no idea what we were doing, but it was a blast and we've had a blast since. And now we've grown and we're continuing to grow. So man, yeah, I'm always here for you. And if anybody else is listening to this and they need help too, like you know where to find me. It's just my name.
Well, people do know your name, but if they want to get a little click further or learn more about Action Academy, what's the best way to do that?
I would go check out Action Academy podcast. So you can go listen most of the episodes. We're going to start this back up probably when you post this in August. We're going to be back up running and we'll have a full calendar that's like 60 days out of content. So we won't run into that problem again. So Action Academy podcast, I talked to a mic and you could see most of our members are on the show. So you can just go hear all their stories and make a decision if you guys want to do it from there. But listen to the stories first, Aaron included.
If you enjoyed this podcast, I guarantee you will enjoy that one. So Brian, it was a pleasure. I really appreciate it. Glad I could celebrate my 3-year anniversary with you and looking forward to the next decade of building together.
Let's do it, brother. See you soon.
right.
All right. Bye.